Only with this kind of weapon we will be able to stop the enemy we are facing now, which is the Russian army. We have many interesting projects that were implemented. Speaking of high-precision weapons, I see a colleague, Oleg. With your help, we have the basic needs for fighting tanks. You remember in 2014 we were in the position to make critical decisions very quickly. Brigade 80 from Lviv was deployed, and we could do our work quite effectively. I support the position of Garbulin Vladimir, the academician. In his book called How We Conquer Russia and the War of Future, very expressly said that a prevailing enemy, especially if this enemy is the Russian Federation, can only be conquered asymmetrically. And that's unmanned, robotized platforms. We need to focus our defense industry, especially in the state sector, in this direction, mosquito fleet of all types. This is where the future is, which will lead us to the victory. Our private companies are actively engaged in developing radar systems, and I hope that at the 30th anniversary of our independence you will see our results when we are marching in the parade. And I also want to highlight one more thing. It's the development of systems for radioelectronic defense. What we see now is that the Russian Federation is using unmanned aerial vehicles, other systems, and we need to develop that. We need to create new systems of radio-electronic defense. You know that the private sector is moving on very actively. They are creating effective mobile systems to address this issue of unmanned flying vehicles. Another thing is that we need to focus on supporting classical weapon and the technical condition of it. Deep modernization.
There will be a lot of time to come back to some of these issues. I already heard you saying very concrete propositions, which I'm thankful for, but there will be more time to come back on some of the things that you said. I really appreciated that you also lined out the fact that effective industry is also about reforms and modernization. I think this was also a very important point you made. Coming back to the last speaker, so what are your views on what should be manufactured? Because that's what we're talking about on this panel.
Thank you, Bruno. I will immediately say that I was invited here as the head of an analytical center, but our analytical center is one of the organizations that creates the Ukrainian Institute of Defense Investigations, headed by academician Garbulin. So things that I'm going to speak about is the position of this institution. What is it that we need? Let's speak about facts and numbers. 2019, September, Saudi Arabia, 10 drones can do a strategic task. Tactic systems are kind of weak, if we are being honest. Killing drones can solve strategic tasks. Just facts so far. I'll comment later. We heard from Alexander Pavluk, the general, who was talking about radio-electronic defense. Anclave, Bukovel, both of them were developed by private companies with their own funds and then presented to the Ministry of Defense. After that, we will have a panel devoted to robotized systems, unmanned vehicles and craft. Furia was developed at the funds of the company, but once it was adopted, it was not purchased any longer. Unmanned aircraft complexes. We saw Oleg Korostelyov, who is really an icon for the Ukrainian army. Sokil 300 that we mentioned in the previous session is the decision, is the solution of one person, of one team. It's not a systemic approach. It's a sporadic, explosive solutions that we see. Communication, automatization. American Harris has been suggesting for 3 years in a row organizing an assembly center in Ukraine for their production. Last year we had the order from the commander of our armed forces that we will have Harris systems. So far we are waiting for localization. Harris is ready to say 40% of localization. We can't do that. I will talk about different options of how we develop technology. A bit later you will understand why I'm jumping from Ukrainian companies to Harris. Another important element is this. Now we see explosive development of defense industry. A large number of companies propose modern equipment. The Ministry of Defense, which is okay, but the Ministry of Defense having a very small budget, $1 billion, which is ultimately nothing. And we understand why they buy ready-made goods. We understand, though, that there is increased attention to developing self-propelled equipment, something else. These are small numbers, and we can't expect large numbers. And that's why we need to look for alternatives. Somebody has to check the level of technology. For example, in Kharkiv, they are assembling electromagnetic weapon. Who can provide us with a conclusion whether it's good for today or not? We heard now about automatic systems or complexes. I was engaged in negotiations with an exporter. A private company went as far as creating a platform, but it's the state who owns the weapon. Now we need somebody who will bring it together, this platform and anti-tank weapon. The exporter says that the general staff doesn't really have the space for it, I'm sorry. They don't have a unit that would be doing with it. We talked about radio electronic defense. We don't understand where we are, they say. We don't know who we are subject to. So this is a question to how we describe the situation in provide instructions. Of course, we have two levels of counter for fighting the enemy. The first is strategic level, when we write that in the military doctrine or any other kind of doctrine, that in case of further aggression, we will fire this number of missiles and hit this number of targets, and we need to understand then the range and the number. And provided that the Ministry of Defense has enough political will, we should go to medium-range missiles then, so that we can hit Moscow. Yes. If we highlight in just that direction, missiles, this is something that Ukraine can do without partners. We never produced fighters. Then we would rather buy 30 fighters from the United States or from Sweden. But this is a very different price if compared to what we can produce in Ukraine. I remember about Saudi Arabia. Now Ukraine needs these mosquito strategies, and for that it needs tactical platform. I highlight tactical. Not too large, not too pricey. The systems that in the air, at land and at sea could be used massively, just now. Not sometimes when we get this Corvette in 3 years. And who and when will give the orders to use this Corvette in real fight? Some of these surface vehicles developments in the Black Sea lack perspective. At least this is how we see the situation today. But with the budget we have, with the opportunities we have, we can't do that today. So, speaking about the technologies that we wish to develop, first we need to settle down our priorities. We choose 1 or 2 strategic programs, state programs, which will, depending on the 5 months each year our defense system loses, have to be selected. These are missile systems. And then if the state has more budget, automatization.
The President has produced an order last year within an agency of defense technologies that will deal in technologies that are enabled for the Ministry of Defense, like electromagnetic weapons, Tier 3, cooperation of military and technique. We believe that this year we will have a law that outlines the formation of joint companies, so we will be able to produce new, I stress, novel technique and transformation of exporters into investors. We have positive examples of investments into tank manufacturing. This tank can be used both for defense of the country and for export. However, this is a primary element, first step. Later we will need novel, modern technique. Using the export money we can develop modern technique. This way we can reach the high-tech army. Thank you.
Very much for your fascinating remarks. You do have to forgive me, but I need to be a strict moderator in obvious of our time. I want to get back to the audience as well for your questions and comments. So please prepare your questions. But before I go back to you, I want to ask one thing to you, because I heard a couple of views here on how to move forward. So one thing I heard is that, okay, we need to invest and produce, or we need to manufacture high precision, unmanned technology, electronic warfare. These are some of the key words that I heard. But how to do it? In my opinion, I heard different views on this panel. I heard we can produce it at home. We do it ourselves. We do it here in Ukraine. We simply buy what we need from abroad, ready-made, and perhaps, we'll figure out how to get the budget together, maybe with the help of international partners. Or there was a third option where we basically create supply chains where you import the parts and put it together in Ukraine. And that means then, of course, that you need to have the Ukrainian defense industry work together with international defense industry. So how is the best, what is your view on this? What is the best way forward for this? And I'll go back to the panel.
Thank you, colleague. These were really good reports and rather synergic. We have a common view, a common platform. As an answering to your question, there is no common variant. We will need all three variants. We can make something by ourselves, and this is a priority for resource accumulation, like missiles. We can make them. We have good missiles. It is sold well. It works well, so let us accumulate money, let us invest, let us develop the Vilha missiles, let us develop recon strike complexes, let us join them to unmanned aircrafts for lockdown, hitting and fire control. How many units we need? It will load the manufacturing facility for many years, and we can also sell such aircrafts. Some products cannot be produced here. Jet fighters, too expensive, too costly, and we're unable to produce them. We should take a political decision. Actually, we have taken it. We need Western technique, Western models. How many, when, and how? It's an issue of an open international tender, as in civilized countries. And some products should be manufactured together in cooperation with particular countries, like helicopter engines or other components. We need to make cooperation companies to take the best elements from the West. We cannot limit ourselves to one option only. We should not try to make everything, because we will fail. Only few countries try to do this. But still, USI buys Norwegian anti-vessel missiles, of course with the localization, and European countries with a great technical and scientific potential. They are still buying weapons from other companies, but still, and we are afraid. Why? I don't know. So all three options are applicable here.
And do you agree with Taras?
I agree. However, this question can be answered in any stage, but only the policy can be responsible for it. And this policy is based on three major platforms: military and technical policy, the policy that determines the needs, the priority trends of weapons, the industrial policy. We are speaking about development of industrial policy, and it should be in line with the technical policy, and military and technical cooperation mentioned by Valentin. It is this cooperation outlines what exactly can we sell, which surplus products can we sell, and what exactly we need to buy. So if the policy works in harmony and progressive way, we will have modern weapons, not forcing our militaries to get what we have, not what they need. Thank you. So I can speak now. Thank you. You have started a question about purchasing something or constructing something. Here there are many types of products like unmanned aircrafts. It is a Ukrainian technique, but what is the percentage of foreign components? Better the developers should say about this. Even the change of military vehicle to new vehicles, it includes over 50 of Ukrainian components. It's a normal conclusion, it's a normal solution, it's normal for many countries. For example, for Turkey, the increase of localization rate is what I mean. In some technologies, it is unable to increase the localization. For example, communication. The Harris company says 40% is the top. Of course, we are unable to create such communication system, but speaking about automatization, I really don't understand Everybody speaks that automatization is required, and the general is speaking about this, but since March there are no works regarding automatization here. Why? I don't know. So, if the companies are unable to do this, probably it's time to change them or to take some governmental decision, because the automatization system and the electronic countermeasures are dominated by Russia here. Speaking about the cooperation of military and technical spheres, first of all, I mean not importing or exporting, not purchasing or selling. I mean development of mutual projects and development of the novel products that will be needed both by foreign investors and the Ukrainian side. But back to missiles. Missiles are what Ukraine can produce by itself. Therefore, I would rather prioritize missiles, disregarding any other technique. Russia is afraid of missiles. If we had 10 missile brigades in our navy, believe me, the Russian vessels would not be that free and careless as they are now. Next year we are going to receive the first missile brigade, and the Loch Construction Bureau and the holding company Artem say they can produce up to 3 brigades per year. So we need concentration. We could have the protected sea within 3 years. So it's time to take decisions.
Okay, so thank you very much for your remarks. I think that you have set the tone for a good debate. Let's go to the audience for questions and remarks. I have a gentleman there, I have a gentleman there. Then we go to you, sir. And please, when you present yourself, and keep it short, please. Straight questions.
Pavlo Lakichuk, Center of Globalistic Strategies. A few years ago, I've talked to an American admiral, and he asked me, what do you think about Ukrainian Navy and robotics in Ukrainian Navy? It seemed to be an untimely question. I said, we have war now. Right now we have crisis. We have low budget. It's no time to speak about robotics. He was paradoxical to me. He said, no, you don't understand. America is a rich country. It can afford building ships with modern weapons and then build the tomorrow's ships. We can build hundreds of ships, and tomorrow we can conserve them and start a new project, quite a new project, due to new policy. Ukraine is a poor country, and it cannot do it like this. So you need to build something judging by tomorrow. So my question is, it's a question to Valentin or to Ruslan, what is the ratio in our conditions? What should be done for today and what should be done for tomorrow?
Let me take this question and one more, and then we go back to the panel. Sir, please, you were raising your hand.
Pavlo Demko,
journalist. I have a question to all 3 speakers, because we're speaking about threats. What do you think about the threat of sabotage in the defense sector, including the levels of law enforcement? What about the threat of corruption that is present in defense facilities? Whether those risks are high and whether they can be minimized, whether they can be handled.
Get back to the panel and start with you, please, and we'll go to the... Would you like to contribute something to the question?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Yes, actually we don't have time for development for 10 years. We cannot pile those documents and wait for a good time to restart work. Our private sector is actually running 10% of the existing need. The military needs update for 60 types of weapons. It's a huge amount of work. So speaking about a nomenclature for future, no. We should rather focus on the today's need, on the urgent, crucial needs of Ukrainian military. So the main thing here is the direct dialogue with military force. The military has to find out what they need to improve, what they need right now, and concentrate. And we should concentrate our forces. The private companies and the state companies should focus on those crucial issues. As for the Navy, our company, the Synergy, in association with CMAGIC, we are developing a prototype of unmanned boat, high-speed boat. We are waiting for a miracle, for investments from our strategical partners, because development of robotics it requires great funds. But we are still working on it. Probably you will see this prototype at the 30th anniversary and you will be able to evaluate it. As for the second question, corruption, threats, well, as for today, we are changing the legislation basis. The governmental requirements become more and more transparent, and probably one day we will have 100% transparency of the defense requests for the respective institutions will be available. This way we can stop the corruption. Everything depends on the central organs of executive powers. It depends on our discussion and the definition of issues. If we are persistent, if we are active, not just talk about the problems, if we participate in development of those legislation acts in order to block the corruption, it will bring its result. Thank you. I will try to start with your question about the American component. Once, I guess in 2006 or 2007, I have been to American aircraft carrier Dwight Eisenhower. It was returning from Iraq with 13 ships in convoy, and the generals that landed there, together with experts and deputies, they were crying actually, because during an hour they had 50 or 60 landings. What I mean, we are not as rich as America. We cannot buy this and that and everything in order to win the war, to make Russia stop its aggression. So in order to win, we need to be brave, to introduce new technologies, and to forget something too big in order to get something small and effective that can be used right now. Two small examples. The new PTR, the new armored vehicle, is 32 million hryvnias worth. Probably something more. One small robotic complex with an anti-tank missile developed by Luch company is about 3 or 4 billions, but it's much less. So you can get a group of battle robots instead of one armored vehicle. Such small, whether the enemy will spend expensive weapons for such small targets, I guess no. expensive missiles will not be used against those small robots. The same as with electronic countermeasures. They will not be as effective, so we can use this option. We can make it right now. The army needs it not to lose its staff every day. The same with aircrafts. One aircraft F-16 is $40 to $50 million worth. So, investment into Sokol 300 and making a line of Sokol 300 models, probably someday we will be able to use the unmanned aircrafts instead of jet fighters. A year ago, Elon Musk said that even F-35 jet fighter has no chance against a modern unmanned aircraft with an artificial intellect, so drones win. I would rather add something to my colleagues. I would rather pay attention to exploitation. Speaking about weaponry and vehicles, today the TAL is operated by humans. Today the Ukrainian military the technique prevails over people who can operate them. The Ukrainian aircrafts prevail over the personnel. The electronic countermeasures, the number of technique is higher than the number of experienced specialists. We don't have enough trained specialists. We can speak a lot about the iron, the hardware. We have the modern, novel robots. But we lack specialists. We lack people who can use it effectively, not only on the level of strategical or tactical, but in the field. We need maintenance, we need repair, we need operation and handling. Robots will not help if we have no specialists. Human resource is a cornerstone of defense. Speaking about the Navy platforms, we got 2 American boats. The staff is 20 persons, and we do not have enough staff. The 3 boats we will have in future will also lack staff. The Ukrainian Navy is unable to find 100 people for 5 modern platforms. And you're speaking of corvettes and other types of vessels. We should be based on we should start with small things and go to big ones. First, we should master the small things.
Contributions. And Ruslan, you actually made us all very curious now about the announcement for the prototype, the unmanned prototype on the 30th anniversary. Looking forward to see that one. Are there more comments or questions from the audience? I have one gentleman there in the back.
Доброго дня, Андрю.
Good morning, Mykolaiv shipyard. With all respect to the panelists, I will have this question. The situation that we see now is that different companies, different ideas, different strategies, all going in different directions. Development of the newest weapon. This newest weapon is produced, is manufactured, is presented at exhibitions. Now we can get together and work together. Maybe it's time already to define the main directions. Ruslan, what do you think? Is that the time already? I highlighted the fact that, first of all, the priorities on creating modern technology